hello everyone. Did not expect to feel like I just got out of biology class, but that last one was pretty cool. So my presentation here is about deploying to Google Cloud without using Kubernetes. Why might you want to do that? Well, anybody that's used Kubernetes probably knows that there is some complexity involved in setting up a Kubernetes cluster. You also have, some costs associated with the servers that are basically just managing the Kubernetes pods. So I did a little experiment just to see, is there a way to do OTP, distributed OTP, in the cloud without necessarily bringing in something like Kubernetes? So there's 4 steps. Launch a virtual machine, apt install, clone the project, run mixphx server, you're good to go. Just kidding, we can do better than that. We can take advantage of some more managed services here. So the question is, what do you need in order to have a dependable deployment system set up for a production environment? Well, first thing you need is a place to store your data. This is probably going to look exactly the same as if you were on Kubernetes. You want some sort of a managed SQL instance, backups, replication, point-in-time recovery. You get all that with Cloud SQL. Next, you need a place to store your secrets. Turns out Google Cloud has an offering called Secret Manager, where you can put your passwords, private keys, API keys, and all of that. There is a caveat, though. If you're using bare VMs, which we'll talk about in just a second, you do need a way to retrieve the secrets from Secret Manager and plop them into your Phoenix config, your Elixir config. So luckily, there is something called a config provider, which allows you to pull values from somewhere other than those files that live in the config folder. So using a custom config provider, you can make an API call to Secret Manager and pull those variables in and put them in the config as if they were in the environment variables. Next, you need a place to run your code. We all love Docker, so let's use that. And Google Cloud has a specific type of a VM image called Container Optimized OS, which is basically just give it an image, it'll run it for you, and it boots it up, loads it, and does all of that automatically for you. We've all probably run the mixphx gen release -- docker. That gives you your Docker file, and you're good to go. Next, we need to scale the code. So just because we're not in Kubernetes doesn't mean we don't want auto scaling. And so Google Cloud has an offering called Managed Instance Groups, which will take a virtual machine template and auto-scale it up and down, and you can use different inputs as the signal to go up or go down, the most basic one being your CPU usage. You can even look at requests. Maybe you're not doing a Phoenix web app, maybe you're doing a consumer type of app, and so you can actually use pub/sub queue signals. And you can even use preemptible VMs, cheaper. It does mean they can pull the power on them at any time, but sometimes that makes sense. Next, you need a place to serve the static assets. So your JavaScript files, CSS files, images, we'll just throw those in a bucket, put a CDN in front of them, and you're good to go on that. And then last, you need a way to automate all this. So Cloud Build comes in. It's your typical build platform. You have steps. Each step can load a Docker image, run some sort of a command, and produce an output. So what does that look like? I have a few snippets here. One of the things we'll do is we'll create an instance template. So this is what describes the container that is going to run. So you give it the image, the environment variables, a few Google Cloud specific arguments, and you're good to go. Next, once you have the new template, now it's time to push that out to the environment. So this tells the managed instance group that you want to take down the VMs that were running the old image and start adding in VMs with the new image. And you can do this. There's a lot of different strategies available, from doing it more gradually to more quickly. There's a lot of options that you can choose there. Then we got to run our ecto migrations, of course. So since we're in a cloud build file, we can just load up the right Docker image that'll allow us to run the migrate shell script that comes when you run mix phx gen release, and then you're live. So once all the cloud build completes, Ecto migrations have run, you now have your VMs running the new image, sitting behind the load balancer, ready to scale as new requests come in. Now, what about the OTP cluster? Didn't touch on that, but we didn't forget about it. So there is a template file in the release overlays where you can set the variables needed to tell OTP that you want to run in a cluster. And so taking advantage of the Google Cloud Metadata API, which is basically a private API available to any VM running in the Google Cloud Network, you can just make a request there, pull the IP address of the private IP address of that virtual machine, and then use that to build the node name that you're going to use in the cluster. And then the last piece to it is using libcluster. I had built a strategy for it that's specific for this scenario. So what it does is it looks at the managed instance group. It assumes that you want to cluster together all the virtual machines in that instance group. So you give it the group name, and it basically works almost exactly like any of the other strategies that you can find for libcluster. And that's it.